read Komi volumes 28 and 29. I think volume 30 is either out or coming out any day now. This one is still like a high priority read, but also kind of shy of top priority. That's one of those series where, like, when I see a new volume come in or see a new volume on the shelf, I'm like, oh, nice. That'll be fun to read. This segment will feature spoilers of something that happened around the time of volume 23, so, you know, if you're still way behind on your Komi and you care about that in your lighthearted high school rom-com comedy manga, then I would say skip this segment, I guess. Anyway, the big focus of these last couple volumes I read was this kind of like study competition that Komi and Tadano's high school got into, where they were in like this head-to-head quiz against another school. And at this point, we go through kind of like a side arc that I wasn't a big fan of, where it's like we run into this character who was like an old love interest of Tadano from middle school, and a lot of the stuff that happens around her character was just like really frustrating, because it's like we learned that back in middle school Tadano tried to ask her out and she said no, she didn't want to date him, but secretly the truth is that she really did want to date him more than anything. But the reason she said no, she wouldn't date him, was because she thought it would help him to grow as a person, and then a few years later he would grow into the kind of person that she does want to date. And I'm like, who in real life would do this? This is so like convoluted and stupid. People in real life, especially when they're in like middle school and high school, if they want to date somebody, they just do. You know, if two people mutually want to date each other, then they just date. They don't go like, I'd really better think about how this will affect my partner's psychological development during this vulnerable period of their life. I think if I say no at this point, then they will mature into a type of person that I would like to date more later. Nobody thinks about that. So, like, that by itself is already, like, kind of a frustrating element of her character. But even worse than that is, soon into this arc, she approaches Komi and goes like, hey, I think I am better than you, and so I challenge you to beat me in our school's quiz competition, and if I win, then you have to break up with Tadano so I can date him. And Komi agrees to this. She like goes along with it, which is another fucking stupid thing to happen. Because all she has to do is be like, no, I'm just not gonna do that. I want to keep dating him, so I'm gonna keep dating him. That's it. End of arc. That's all that has to happen. But instead it's like built up as this like tense rivalry and competition, and I'm like, why would this happen? Why would anybody do this? You know, because the biggest hole in this is like, suppose Komi loses, and like what happens next? She goes to Tadano and says, hey, I lost a bet, so I have to break up with you now. We're broken up. And now you have to date this other girl because of this bet I made. He would just be like, well, no. I'm not gonna do that. Sorry. I don't know, it completely skirts by character agency for this kind of convoluted competition plot. I don't know, I mean, overall it's still like the same funny comedy manga as it's always been, and you know, it's not like I'm reading it for the overarching plot lines most of the time, so, you know, I still enjoyed reading it. I just had to laugh at this kind of convoluted storytelling in these past couple volumes. We did get one or two really good Najimi chapters, though, in this time, which I was more than happy to see after entirely too much Najimi neglect in the last, like, 5 or 10 volumes I've been reading. Anyway, I'm still looking forward to more Komi. I've read some more of Spy Family. I'm up to volume 11 now. It's a shame that we only seem to get like 2 volumes of this manga per year, because I really do enjoy it a lot still. It's a ton of fun. This volume, I'm going to use as kind of a springboard to talk about like a larger problem that I've seen a lot of in anime and manga that has frustrated me. So, a big arc that's going on in Volume 11 is like Anya's school was headed out on a field trip and their bus gets hijacked by terrorists and all of the kids are being held hostage. And so, you know, it's about Anya and Lloyd and other characters trying to escape that hostage situation. Now, as it so happens, as this plotline goes along, we learn that, like, the leader of the terrorists who is taking the hostages was basically, you know, driven to this because his daughter got killed at a war protest, you know, fairly recently, and essentially he feels like he has been driven into a corner and, like, his government and his society have failed him, and this is him kind of, like, striking back and trying to take back his life and, like, trying to honor his daughter's memory or something like that. The point that I wanted to jump into to kind of springboard off of here, this is something that I've seen come up largely in action series like Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia, which My Hero I have not read, but I have watched, where, you know, this little arc in Spy Family is very, like, demonstrative of this problem that I keep seeing crop up, which is they will tell you this whole backstory of the, like, villain characters, and you'll kind of go along with them and you will see, like, wow, I can really understand how you were driven into a corner here. I can really see how your upbringing failed you, society failed you, your government failed you, and nobody is ever going to take responsibility for that failure, so now it makes perfect sense that you have turned to a life of crime/evil. They take you through all of that. They drum up this, like, perfect empathy for these characters who are now, like, committing a crime. And then there is no proposed solution. The good guys then just go, time to now throw you in jail or kill you. Like, it's kind of messed up because you can't look at the main character of a series like My Hero Academia facing off ideologically against one of the villain characters, because, you know, he is a character who has basically had so much handed to him in life and is basically just blessed and gifted with so many good things. I mean, he is literally handed superpowers after not being born with them. Whereas, you know, you have all of these other characters who, in contrast, have just had nothing but a series of injustices handed to them their whole life. And, you know, now it's up to the characters who have always had everything to just condemn the bad characters forever now. And, like, I don't know, it's kind of frustrating, because it's like, if you're gonna generate empathy for a character who is in this situation of, like, villainy or crime, then I feel like, you know, there needs to be an out for that character. There needs to be, like, a silver lining or a light at the end of the tunnel, and instead it's just like, okay, I guess you die now. It's like, yep, sucks that all that happened to you, time to die. So I don't know, I mean, this is something to discuss in a situation other than, like, my semi-yearly manga recap, but sometimes I don't like to see that situation of this could have happened to literally anyone, because it's also putting forth that idea that if it had been you who had gone through all of these misfortunes that were completely out of your hands, then now it's just up to people who had better luck in life to throw you in prison for the rest of your life or kill you. So, that said, Spy Family is still really funny. I will continue reading every volume as soon as it arrives at the Manga Cafe, and I continue to love it. We are now up to that awkward point in the recap where I tell you I read Nagatoro, Volume 16. If you're no stranger to my past recaps, you know, I keep teasing this idea that I want to make a longer video delving specifically into this series, and why I continue to read it despite so many trashy elements that it sports. And honestly, you know, I have started working on that. I have begun work on that larger video, I've written the script for it, and I have recorded that whole voiceover, made some of the video elements that will go into it. The thing about that, though, is like, I have to be pretty depressed to work on that video and like delve into the topics that I want to delve into. There's really like no other way to like talk about that. There's no way to like sugarcoat it. I have to be like feeling pretty shitty about life to put forth the work to work on that video. I will say, you know, for the record still, this is a manga that deeply resonates with me personally. I don't tend to like try to recommend it to other people. And you know, if it was not for a very specific set of life experiences that came to me in my past, I would absolutely never touch this manga. But anyway, hopefully we'll be seeing that longer video about Nagatoro, because I do think it could make for something really compelling and like something unlike anything I have published before. The thing is though, if you ever do see that video come out, check on me, because if I finish that video, it means I've probably been feeling pretty consistently depressed for a pretty long time. So on the one hand, if and when I ever come out with that, I will be proud of the work that I've done. I will also probably have been feeling like shit. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much more of that kind of vague commentary, so I'm going to move on and talk about the next series. I've now got Candy and Cigarettes Volume 7 and Candy and Cigarettes Volume 8. This is still a series that I'm enjoying quite a lot. Once again, I know it is a finished series, we're just waiting for the last of the volumes to get published in English, which I think there are now only 3 more on the way. This is, as usual, a series that I am just reading for the sake of, like, the fantastic, slick, pulp action, and just really over-the-top and indulgent action combat scenes, because that is one thing that this series does really well. I'm also just kind of a fan of the art style. It's like kind of simple, kind of cartoony at times, but also just, I don't know. It's hard to describe, I want to just call it slick. I know that's not like a very good descriptor. So this has turned into kind of a globe-trotting series. Obviously, like, part of it took place in Japan. There was a part in volume, what was it, like 4 or 5, I think, where the characters traveled to America, and I absolutely loved that. I ate that up. And now, in volumes 7 and 8, they have gone to the Middle East. And it is kind of comical how all throughout this entire arc, they just keep referring to it as the Middle East. They're just like, we are in the Middle East. Boy, it sucks being here in the Middle East. Like, not once do they name a specific country. And you know, this is not a manga that takes place in, like, a fantasy version of the real world, like Spy Family, where they're going to countries like Ostania and Westalis. No, I mean, they're going to, like, Japan and France and the United States of America and the Middle East. You know, there's a lot of countries in the Middle East. You could be in quite a lot of places over there. Some of those countries are pretty large, too. I'm not saying that I'm an expert on the Middle East, but the creator of this manga also clearly is not an expert on the Middle East. And that kind of makes me go, like, if you know little enough about this region that you're not even going to name one country there, maybe don't make that a setting for your story. You know, maybe just write about the characters going somewhere else. Because I don't know, it's just, you feel this, or I feel this kind of secondhand embarrassment that they set part of their story in a region and are just so vague about anything existing in that region. Because, like, you know, clearly the creator just doesn't know that stuff. And so I don't know, I want to say, like, stick to the stuff that you do know. You know, it's fine if you set the majority of the story in Japan, because that would clearly be the area that you know. It's not like I'm reading this series to learn about other countries and other cultures, you know, I'm just reading it for, like, cool, well-composed action scenes. You know, there's an action sequence in these last couple volumes where the characters are, like, held prisoner on a cargo ship, and they break out, and they are, like, operating the crane that's lifting the shipping containers on the ship, and they're, like, swinging these containers around and, like, smashing them into other parts of the ship and smashing them into people, and eventually, like, stuff gets so out of hand that they sink the ship altogether and end up stranded at sea. You know, it's that kind of, like, zany, over-the-top action that I am reading for. And, you know, I do still be continuing to get that, and so Candy and Cigarettes is still a pre-order every volume series for me. Thanks for watching to the end of yet another video, and a special thanks to the financial supporters of Truth's Manga Cafe listed here. With this video, we are now at the end of my summer manga recap, just a few days before the beginning of fall. I guess this did kind of take me a long time, but it felt like I was much more efficiently working through my workload this time. I mean, my raw footage was close to 4 hours long this time, which was considerably longer than normal, but I finally did it, and I felt like I did it at a good pace. Anyway, let's look at this installment's audience question, which comes from Crow Kid over on Discord. He asks, what game most makes you feel like gaming has value beyond as a momentary diversion? This is another really good question that I'm going to have to try not to spend too long talking about. I could give you a basic answer and be like, the Reader Rabbit game that I played when I was 5 years old had value because it helped me learn how to read as a child, but I feel like that's kind of obvious. In another vein, I would like to bring up an indie game I played called Bear's Restaurant, which was really like a very basic gameplay experience. It's mostly just like walking around scenes and pressing A to talk to characters and make the story progress. It doesn't have a lot of like player choice or branching story paths or anything like that, but it was an emotional experience that I will never forget. And this kind of deep exploration of trauma and grief that I think is going to stick with me for most or all of my life. And for kind of a broader answer, I guess, you know, anytime I'm playing a multiplayer game, be it like a co-op or party game or something like that, I think that has a lot of value just because it's a good bonding experience with friends. You know, when I think back fondly on playing a video game with friends, I'm not thinking about how fun the video game was, but more of thinking how much I enjoyed spending time with those friends. So there's a nice, sentimental, thoughtful answer for you. Anyway, thanks once again for making it all the way to the end here. I'm sure I'll be doing a winter end-of-year manga roundup at the beginning of 2025, so stay tuned for that and whatever I happen to make next. See you then.